Um, Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I am delighted today to be talking with Andrew Graff, who's the CEO of Allen Gerritsen, who have very kindly just joined the Mission Hubs Partner Group. We're delighted to have them with us. They're a great agency. Andrew, you and I have known each other for a few years now, I think. I dread to think how many actually, but I was wondering, maybe you could tell us just a little bit about Allen and Gerritsen and where the agency came from, the sort of stuff that you do, so our colleagues within the mission can understand a little bit more about how we can work together.
Yeah, so Paul, really great to see you. So A&G, Allen and Gerritsen, our original founders, who are no longer with the agency, founded the agency in 1985. So it's making us a 38-year-old agency. Our roots started in sort of technology, but since then has really expanded into equal parts B2B and B2C. And what's really interesting about a 38-year-old and just sort of being your 30s, we epitomize a typical 38-year-old. You're kind of fully established, not 100% mature, and really looking at sort of like what's next as you sort of enter that next chapter. We've always been an agency that's been about what's next. Because of our roots in technology, originally, we've always had just a fascination with how technology plays a part in marketing. And right now, it's a very interesting time period. But us as an agency, we sit at this sort of interesting intersection between this creative entrepreneurship and working with brands that have purpose, or helping them find their purpose. We are a comprehensive agency. We offer, we think about brand from communications to the customer experience. And we're spending a lot more time in the performance side and really looking at the investment strategy that brands need to be successful in today's modern day. Our clients tend to be very much more modern marketers as opposed to like real traditionalists. They're looking to kind of push into the more contemporary practices. And so while we offer all, the creatively rooted parts of our business, about 2 years ago, we acquired a CX agency that really helps us think about the operationalizing side of the brand. But we offer public relations, social media, creator relations, influencer, and of course, all digital, the whole digital suite. And of course, now AI.
Oh, AI, yeah. We'll come to that a little later, I think. But I'm right in thinking that you are. I know you're joining us today from for Martha's Vineyard, but the agency's in central Boston, and you've also got another office in Philadelphia. That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually been very interesting over the last couple of years, and we are. We actually don't really call it an office anymore. We call it a third space, and I'll explain that in a second. But the third space, we have a third space in Boston and Philadelphia, both cities where in the US are pretty significant, where independence really is the focal of the country.
There's something about throwing a lot of tea in the water, I seem to remember, especially in Boston.
There is. And our third space in Boston overlooks Boston Harbor and where all that happened. And in Philadelphia, our third space overlooks Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell. And that's pretty significant for us to be in cities that we're focused on independence. It fits who our brand is. But for us, independent is also about entrepreneurship. And we've kind of brought people together that love to build and grow and are curious and really pushing for what's the latest of how do brands show up and impact not only their own businesses, but the world. Our third spaces, the whole idea behind it is over the last couple of years with COVID and more people working from home, we designed new spaces that the brief was take the comforts of home tied to the functionality that you need from an office and create the workplace of the future. And the workplace of the future for us has great kitchens and living rooms and really interesting places to gather. But it's not limited to the four walls. It's what's in the neighborhood, what's else is in the building. So there's golf simulators and gyms and clubhouses and all that, and really kind of shifting how creativity gets inspired and how do we bring people back in. We're a business of needing to be together, and so we've really focused on why do we intentionally need to be together as opposed to come into the office because you need to. So we look at desks as touchdowns because the desk is kind of solitary. You can do that at home. And so really, as we focused over the last 2 years on the agency, we looked at things like what's the future of the work? What's the future of the workplace? And really the future of the workforce. And now we have a pretty distributed workforce that are not limited to the two cities, but are spread out throughout the US. But we're also, part of the joining mission is to say, one, could we spread out, more globally? And two, could we offer employees the opportunity to go live and work still for us, just somewhere else, but have an anchor?
Cool. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I speak to a lot of agencies, and I think the third space is something that's particularly prevalent at the moment. And I know, Mission's just moved into a big new space in Tottenham Court Road in central London, and a similar sort of idea and philosophy about making a place that people want to come to, because it is an important thing. We work in a people industry, and there's an exchange of creativity that happens when people meet, and that's what it's all about. So how many people do you have now within the agency as a group?
Yeah, so we've actually changed our model quite a bit. So we have about 125 full-time folks, but we've created a whole collaborator model that has much more contract, part-time, and collaborators that we sort of like work with. And we've done this by design because we really wanted to meet the future of the workplace, the workforce where they are. And not everybody wants that traditional arrangement anymore. And so we've kind of revamped everything, including our benefits programs and our connections, and have allowed, we want the best talent. And so it doesn't need to be like contained to what it was in the past. And agency business is like the place, like I think we've done this for years. It's not a new thing. It's just, how do we more formalize it?
Yeah, no, I agree. I love the way that you've sort of embraced use the change forced upon us by the pandemic to actually look at it and go, actually, could we do something different? Could we make a change that's for the better? And you seem to be in a very good place with it at the moment. It seems to be working well for you.
We have, right from the start, I never would call it the return to office. I would only call it the future of the workplace, because I wanted to use that time period. And one of the things, as you get to know me, I am very much a challenger of the status quo. It's like, just because you've been doing it that way doesn't mean you keep doing it the same way over and over again. There's always something better. And so could we challenge that? And so the challenging of it was, and I was inspired by a gentleman, Rashad Tabakawala. I don't know if anybody's ever heard him speak. He's pretty well known in the Publicis family. And he talked about the office of the past, and that someday it would be in a museum, and articulate like, here's how people used to work in the old days. And there was something very interesting about that. We also had the opportunity that our leases were up. We also had another opportunity where we weren't limited to where we were hiring folks. And so it gave us this amazing opportunity to just sort of reimagine but also think about those intentional reasons we needed to be together in person versus, versus video. Pre-pandemic, we were doing that because we have multiple offices. And so by nature, we know how to cross teams. And again, this is one of the things that's really interesting because we're at that sort of inflection point that said we can cross teams anywhere and with anyone. And that's what's pretty exciting about us joining Mission, is to kind of think about that.
Yeah, no, if you go back, of course, the idea of this type of interview conversation maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when we were sort of dealing with the dreaded Skype and things like that, it was unheard of. And so the idea now that you can work from anywhere and you can delve into various talent pools around the world is fantastic. Talking about talent, you mentioned the agency does a sort of 50-50 split B2B B2C.
Yep.
What's the one piece of work that has really stood out for you in your time with Allen Gerritsen A&G?
So there's so many great client and great client cases, and part of that is we've made this commitment with our client base to really want to focus. The way we describe it is brands who want to do better, be better, and make the world a better place. And so what do I mean about that? So if they want to do better, they're not coming to us for like the status quo, and they want to personally be better. They've been doing things a certain way, and they recognize that they just want to be better at their own craft. And the make the world the better place is definitely aspirational. But what we did is we started to look at categories of where we wanted to do business. So thinking about economic development or health and wellness, but also climate and sustainability and social justice. And we've brought in clients in these categories. We still do a lot in consumer and retail and have some amazing brands. But one of our recent examples, and we're Boston based, and we, through a really competitive pitch, 25 agencies in this pitch, whittled to 18. And then we wound up winning the Boston tourism business.
Cool.
And it was this example of how we think about approaching a very cross-functional, integrated team coming together to transform and enhance the global visitation to the region. And we think about the economic development of it, and while it's focused on tourism and hospitality, the trickle effect of what that does for job creation and all of that. And Boston has this amazing history, and then there's some not so amazing history that's happened in Boston. And we have this amazing opportunity to start to write a new narrative for Boston to make it much more appealing for a diverse community to come in from all around the world. And so we're able to tap into our multicultural marketing side of things, as well as all the forms of communications, the customer experience. And most importantly, like, what's the investment strategy and how do we think about performance marketing in this? And it's one of like my favorite examples, because for really, I should say relatively old for the US, very young for the rest of the world. Boston's a city that's just never settled, and it's continued to be dynamic. And there's these amazing stories that haven't been told and new ones that still need to be written. And we're really psyched for how this is starting to come to market, and look forward to sharing that work.
Love to see it. I'm always I always think of these sort of the campaigns where you're looking to promote a destination, specifically a city. They can be a bit of a double-edged sword, I found, and they either go extraordinarily well. I'm thinking things like I Am Amsterdam, for example, which you may or may not have seen as years ago. But also, that sort of a large area like New South Wales, where you've got that famous campaign that won at Cannes a few years ago to promote, the Australian thing. But also they can go disastrously wrong. But whatever happens, it's an amazing opportunity if you're in that environment. And as you say, and you take a very holistic approach to how that communications and get involved in the story and look at the sort of the spread of what the work will be and the impact that it's going to have on multiple stakeholders and target audiences. I mean, it's quite a fun thing to do. I can see why you enjoy that.
Yeah, well, it's also interesting because it really taps into our consumer experience and our business to business experience. Like I said, it's as much about the vibrancy and it being a destination as it is about the economic impact that it has, to the region and the jobs being created. So.
Yeah, and it's the immeasurable impact of the communications and the marketing and all the rest of it. Of course, is where we should be. But just to move it on a little bit, Andrew. I mean, as I said at the start, you and I have known each other a little while, but I've never really known how you personally got started in this industry. And I'm always fascinated because when you talk to people, I mean, I've been in it for about 30 years, and talk to people about how they got into it, the thing that comes back is, well, I never really meant to be in advertising. I never meant to be in marketing, but I ended up doing it. What's your story? I'm just being nosy, actually.
No. It's actually kind of a funny story because I knew early this is what I wanted to do. Early, like high school early.
Wow.
And the reason for that is my dad, by education, was a scientist. He was a microbiologist. But he actually wound up running sales and marketing for a global life sciences company. My mother was much more the creative person. And so what I would say is, like, I was a good mix of the two of them. And my dad's job, because he traveled so much, which really required him to do the marketing side of his job at either a Friday night or on a weekend. Mm-hmm. And so I always would say he was the world's worst client because they had to come to our house to get him either Friday night. Luckily, his lead person we lived not too far from her. And so she would be at our house a lot. And I just started asking all these questions. And I'm in high school trying to figure out, I'm going to go to college. What am I going to major in? It definitely wasn't going to be science. I could tell you that. Like, that was not a strong suit of mine. But my dad was very much like, listen, you're going to want to make money, so you need to go to business school. Like, he was not a believer in like an arts and sciences or any of that. Even, and I kind of wanted to go to school for communications because after talking, and hearing how folks did this, but my dad was adamant that I go to business school, and really kind of felt like I should be an accounting major because, you're pretty much guaranteed a job. I think that was a generational thing. Mm-hmm. I went off to college, took accounting, and I was like, oh God, I don't even know what he was thinking of why I should be, an accounting major. But I gravitated towards the marketing and management. And through lots of negotiation, I asked, my dad if I could go spend time at his agency. And so I went in, obviously I knew the one person, and I was on borrowed time. It was like, I'm going to maximize this moment and see if this is really what I want. And they actually invited me to do an internship. But back then, like, I don't even think it was called internships. It was just like, hey, why don't you come hang with us in the summer? And from that moment on, I was like, I know this is what I want to do. I loved being surrounded by creative people. Now, keep in mind, I was not doing anything remotely advertising. I was running errands for people. I was like cleaning equipment. But in the in-between of things, I could ask people, like, how did you get into this business? All that. So I've always had like this curiosity of that. And so today we have a really robust intern program because that's how I started. And today I still view myself as like an intern. I feel like if you're not learning every day, there are other industries that you can be like a little bit more stagnant or just keep repeating. And what I love about being a creative business is you're only as great as your next idea, not like the last 10 you had. And so that's kind of kept me on my toes all this time. But that's how I got started. I fell in love with it early. And to this day, those reasons are still the reasons why I love this business. I love a great idea. And I'm like, wow, like, how did you come up with that?
I love the point where you talk about curiosity. I worked a little while ago and with a lady, and she had a coffee coaster that said "Curiosity is a muscle, exercise it." And I think that's that's a great metaphor. Great metaphor for life. I mean, I guess from there, I mean, you talked about your intern program, and one of the things that I'm quite keen to do with these sort of talks, interviews, we've done doing several more, is to encourage people who are perhaps new into the industry and starting in the industry, to learn a little bit and give them a few sage words. I mean, advice is great when it's been doled out, but it obviously doesn't affect everybody, and it's take it or leave it. I mean, if you were to look back on your career, and would there be one piece of professional advice that older Andrew would give to younger Andrew and say, this is what you really need to watch out for, this is what you really need to do or don't do?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's actually a great question. Here's what I would definitely tell myself, and I would tell anybody else: enjoy the thrill of the roller coaster ride.
That's cool.
Because in this business, there's the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows, and you have to be built a certain way to have like that sustainable power to stay in this industry. And that curiosity piece is what I love that thrill. I get excited by it, and that just hasn't changed. I think if I was in another industry, I'd be bored because it'd be like sort of the same, not the same, and not that it doesn't move faster, but we have this opportunity to see so many different industries, see how different businesses work. The business school thing was right. My dad was right. I wound up getting my MBA along the way because I had that entrepreneurial side of the creative as well. And so the advice, again, that I give anybody in this business is it literally is not for everyone, but for the ones that it is for, it is amazing. And it's constantly moving.
Yeah, and I think that's great and well summed up, to be honest with you. And I share your thoughts on that. I really do. Maybe if we could just spend a minute or two now, because on Mission has agencies all around the world, and we do a lot of work in the US, and it's always interesting to talk to people about their domestic market from their perspective. And I was wondering, what do you think makes the US market for what we do in agency world different to, say, the UK or anywhere else in the world? What makes it unique? What are the things that really stand out? Do you think that actually this is a US special thing, or for good or bad? I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's obviously the US has a perspective. But I think from a marketing standpoint, and it's thrilling to me to see work from around the world. We live in a market where there's lots of invention, lots of try things out. We're located in a town, in a city that, a lot of firsts happen, and a lot of invention is created, given sort of our universities and all of that. So when we sort of look at, when people come from all over the world to go to school in Cambridge and in Boston itself, to kind of see that entrepreneurship spirit, I do think that our consumer values are very different, how we buy, and our motivations are very different. We have short attention spans. We have, embraced a lot of technology quickly, and how does that impact how to get to consumers? And we spend a lot of time thinking about like the very generational aspect of things, because there's such differences, and we are marketers to the multi-generational, really pretty eclectic mix of people. Family structures are very different. They continue to evolve here, and then some of the it's also a country that's sort of divided in its views. And so how, as a marketer and a brand, to either stand for something or try to be everything to everybody, which does not work here in the US.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I think there's a sort of, a lot of markets, particularly at the moment, politically, socio-politically, there is a very distinct divide, and I think it's, as you say, it's interesting where you choose to fall on one side or the other, or appeal to everybody, and it's a challenge for today's time. You touched on the technology side of things, and without wishing to sort of jump on the proverbial bandwagon, and you mentioned AI earlier. I mean, what's your view on AI within the creative industry? Because obviously there's been a whole bunch of stuff, about ChatGPT recently and taking all our jobs, writing copy and briefs, and I've had a go, and it's quite good, I will say. But what's your take on it?
Well, it's really interesting because we have like a cohort inside the agency that's really spending a lot of time of like point of view and really digging into it. If you look at Ken, like a year ago, what they were talking about versus here, today, it's all about AI. I think there's a lot of hype around it right now. I think it will settle in, but kind of our overall point of view is it's great for like jump starting, knowledge. I don't believe that it replaces human thinking. And I don't believe that that it's going to take over the planet or the world. What I do believe is that it is a new bar set for us in the creative business, which says, if our ideas show up in AI, they're just not good enough. Like, it's the bar that we have to be more creative than what you could put into any of these AI tools. And so we're testing the tools and saying, all right, like, what would it be? And would that, so if it came out that way, how do we leapfrog above it? Because the reality is in the US, there's been a big trend towards in-house agencies. And we just have a simple mantra that, like, if a client could do it themselves, then they should. We have to be where clients can't do themselves. And that starts with like the big ideas and the big thinking, and being assisted by the computer is not going to come up with those ideas that stand out, make a brand different. Now, does it serve a role in some of the production aspect and things like that require, frankly, the things that agencies wouldn't really want to do, that I could see brands doing? I think that's great, but I think it's impacting every part of our business, from creative to media to search and all that. And we have to be on top of it. We can't ignore it. But now let's, like, how do we do better and be better? So does it put us on our toes? So that's kind of my basic view.
No, I think I like the idea where you're talking about AI being the almost providing the lowest common denominator when it comes to sort of creative or strategic output, and actually we need to be better than that. And I think, as agency people, we should always say that to ourselves. How, and it comes back to the curiosity thing. How can we do that better? Why should we make that different? But no, I agree.
I mean, at the end of the day, brands are selling to humans.
Yeah,
and humans are attracted to brands. So Can it assist in some of the tasks? Yeah, but it is not, and maybe I'm naive and it's in its infancy and all of that, but I don't think so. It's like, because there's always something new, and having roots in technology, spending a lot of time with like Marcom stacks, like a year ago was all about NFTs and all that. Like, there's some element, or the metaverse or all that. There's something that it's in its starting point. It's not necessarily where it may just end up. So, but you got to pay attention to it.
Yeah, and the great thing is, of course, this is all being recorded, so you and I can sit back in 2 years' time and watch it and see how wrong we were.
That I've been replaced as a CEO.
And I'm an avatar, which will probably be a big improvement, but there we go. Hey, listen, Andrew, we're almost out of time, but I really wanted to thank you so much for doing this, for sharing your thoughts with us today. I think we should probably finish up by saying, to all our mission colleagues and our other partners across the network, if they want to get in contact with you guys, you're the best person to reach out to directly, or how should they reach to you?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to meet as many of everybody in the network. So yeah, so I would love for that to be the initial contact. What I promise you is I have this like amazing team that like I want you all to meet as well, because while I may be the CEO in the forefront, my number one skill that I've learned: hire people better than you. And I've kind of lived that for a really long time, and just surround yourself with the best people, and then remove the barriers for them to do the best work possible.
Great. Great. Cool. So, Andrew, thank you so much for your time, and we're looking forward to working with you, challenging you guys, doing stuff with you, and achieving great things together. So I know you've got the rest of the day ahead. It's sort of mid-afternoon here, so I'm on the sort of downward slope to a gin and tonic.
Right,
but
on the weekend, so that's even better. Maybe I'll join you soon.
Well,
after all, this is a creative business. There's no real timeline when you can't start.
No, the sun is always over the yard arm somewhere in the world, as they say. So on which happy note, I'll thank you again, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely, same. I can't wait to see you, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you.